Let's talk about the economic war once the kinetic war, as you say, is over, and you say Russia's not a punching bag that takes hits without hitting back. You cite, for example, Russia will be teaming up with China to roll out the Chinese credit card system for Russian consumers. This comes after Visa and MasterCard ended all business with Russia. Their efforts won't end there. So let's start with that. How we might see this power play emerge between China and Russia, or this teaming up, this partnership.
Right. Well, let's start with the sanctions and then pivot over to how China can replace a lot of other points of contact in terms of the Russian economy. These sanctions will not work to stop the war or slow the war or change the outcome of the war. Now, they absolutely punish the Russian economy. Yep. They punish Russian individuals, consumers, Russian citizens. They're going to have fewer options, more expensive goods. Their economy is going to slow down. Unemployment will go up. The ruble is devalued. All those things are true. But they're also true in the United States. We're going to punish Americans far worse than the Russians. We're already seeing, I took a long trip yesterday. I filled up my car with gas at the end of the trip. It was $76. It used to be $45 to fill up my car. Now it's $76. Yeah. Not quite doubling. Well, multiply that by 200 million cars and every consumer in the United States and elsewhere in the world. You're seeing the impact of this already. It's not like, oh, gee, it's coming. It's already here. It's going to get a lot worse. And when I say a lot worse, I'm not just talking about prices in the grocery store, which are going to go up a lot. They have gone up already. I mean, inflation's already here. Watch what's going to happen. Ukraine's kind of one of their nicknames is the breadbasket of Europe. They provide about, Russia and Ukraine together provide about 25% of the grain exports in the world. Pick your country, but when you get to Africa, there are countries in Africa where they get almost 100% of their grain from Ukraine. Lebanon gets 100% of its grain from Ukraine. Those people are going to starve because the Russians have taken over the Sea of Azov. They're working on the Black Sea ports. Odessa's the big one that's left, but Odessa's in their sights. That'll be a month to 6 weeks away because they got to finish up Mariupol and connect the line from Kharkiv to Donetsk and then extend to Crimea. So they have a lot of work to do in the south and the east to consolidate that. But then they'll turn and Kiev's last. Everyone's like, oh gee, Putin had a 3-day blitzkrieg in Kiev and they didn't do it, so he's failed. That's not true. Where did that come from? That's a Western propaganda narrative to set up Putin as a failure. That was never Putin's plan. Have you seen the Russian battle plans? I haven't, but I know what they're doing just by looking at their operations. Kiev is last on the list. They want to get Odessa first, but when they do, and this may already be the case because the Russian Navy is in the Black Sea, there are not going to be any exports from Ukraine, and the U.S. has banned most exports from Russia. And Russia has retaliated by saying, we're not going to export you anyway, even if you didn't have a ban. You're on our banned list. So, but you take 25% of the world's grain exports off the market. Tell me what that does to the price of wheat. And by the way, wheat's not just a loaf of bread. Most grain is used to feed livestock. So it goes straight through the price of pork, chicken, beef, etc. You're looking at things doubling or more. And then that's if you can get it. Then behind that are shortages. Now, we had a supply chain breakdown before any of this started. The supply chain has been breaking down in stages over the last several years. That became acute last fall, and everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, give it a month, they'll sort things out. No, it's getting worse. And now you put the Ukraine war on top of that and the economic sanctions on top of that, it's going to get a lot worse. So those are some of the economic effects, and those are the easy ones. I'll give you an example of a more difficult one. So, we kicked Russia and their 10 biggest banks out of SWIFT, worldwide banking telecommunications facility. So you can't use SWIFT to move money around. Kicked them out of the dollar payment system. Did a long list of things. Can't trade Russian bonds, can't receive, can't send, etc. Well, the other day, the Central Bank of Russia paid dollar interest on their external dollar-denominated bonds. And everyone's like, wait a second, I thought we had sanctions. I thought we kicked them out of the system. Here Russia's paying, now they have about $150 billion of external dollar-denominated debt. They had a big payment coming up, interest payment, and they paid it. Like, how did that work? Well, two things. Number one, you got to read, I've actually read all these sanctions. It's a couple hundred pages at this point. But in the fine print, a lot of these things have delayed effective dates. They were issued in late February, early March. but they had 30, 60, or 90-day delays in the effective date, depending on the sanction. So most of them aren't even in place yet, number one. Number two, somebody at the Treasury finally woke up and said, well, wait a second. If we tell Russia they can't pay their debt, who loses from that? They keep the money, and our bondholders, it's American bondholders who lose money. It's the creditor who loses out when the debtor can't pay. Where are those bonds? Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of them are in BlackRock. They could be in someone's 401k. Like, I didn't buy any Russian bonds. Well, did you buy an emerging market ETF from Morgan Stanley? Because there could be some Russian bonds in there. I mean, take a look. But my point is, this is where, when I made the comment, what happens in Russia doesn't stay in Russia. When you tell the Russians that they can't pay their debt, and so debt starts defaulting all over the world, you don't know where it's going to pop up. But you're now playing, this is why I used the nuclear war analogy, you're playing with a global liquidity crisis. Because that's how these things can evolve very quickly, as we saw in 2008 and 1998.
There's also now, in terms of more sanctions, proposed legislation in the U.S. Senate to freeze gold reserves held by the Central Bank of Russia. But you say, good luck with that, because that is one question that I was thinking, like, why wouldn't Russia, or would they sell some of their gold to get out of this mess?
Well, the only way to freeze gold reserves, we're talking about physical bullion, by the way, that they have in Russia. Apparently some of it's outside of Russia. I don't know exactly how much, but some of it may. It's foolish to leave your gold with the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England, because that's just, might as well just sign it over to the exchequer. But most of it's in Russia, but some of it is not. But the only way to freeze the physical bullion in Russia is to leave it out in the cold, because that's the beauty of physical bullion, which is it's not digital, it's not in some account, and you can't freeze it. Now, what they did, just to be a little bit technical, Daniela, the pending legislation says, well, yeah, we can't actually seize the gold without sending the 101st Airborne into Moscow, which of course we're not going to do. But if you sell the gold, we're going to freeze the proceeds. So it immobilizes the gold. It's actually what Goldfinger was doing in that old James Bond movie from 1964. Everyone, at least in the movie version, everyone thought Goldfinger was going to take the gold out of Fort Knox. That was not the plan. The plan was to make it radioactive so it couldn't be used, and then that way he could corner the market. So what we're saying is, if you sell the gold, we're going to seize the proceeds, so therefore you can't sell it, therefore it's no good to you. That has some impact, but it's not exactly true, and here's why. You can put that gold on a plane and fly it to China and unload it in a secure PLA Air Force air wing base in China and use it to pay for whatever you want. So you can't. It's either barter, or if you want to say gold is money, which is how I look at it, it's just delivering the cash in gold form.
So why would they do anything that would risk the U.S. dollar losing its reserve currency status?
Because they didn't understand it. Now, you would think they would. You would think, but there's the number 2 guy at the Treasury, it's Wally something. He's the sanctions guy. He's on point. I don't know if he's a deputy secretary of the Treasury, but he's a senior official in the Treasury, and he's on point for the sanctions. I haven't met him personally, by the way, but I checked him out. Looks like a thoroughly bright guy, but other than carrying Larry Fink's briefcase for a few months, I mean, he's a year maybe, he's never had a job outside of academia or government. So he doesn't really understand the real world and doesn't understand what we're discussing right now. So the answer to the question, Danielle, is that they didn't think this through. They don't understand these knock-on effects. They don't understand how the international monetary system actually works. They don't understand the blowback. I mean, I'll give you another example. This one has received some publicity. So we throw all kinds of sanctions on Russia. So Russia said, okay, we're going to stop Russian exports of strategic metals and chemicals and other elements that everyone else needs for inputs in their manufacturing processes. And they put a ban on exports of nickel. Well, okay, so you need nickel to make batteries, so good luck with your electric vehicles. Okay, so U.S. throws sanctions on Russia. Russia retaliates by banning nickel exports. The price of nickel goes to the moon. It went up by a factor of 4 or 5. That's really not surprising. London Metal Exchange fell down. They had to close. Yeah. Okay, but who lost? There was a Chinese billionaire who owns one of the largest nickel mining operations in the world, who lost, I think, $5 or $6 billion. So here's Russia and the U.S. fighting an economic war, and the loser pops up in China. That wasn't on his radar screen, and that wasn't on anybody else's radar screen. But it's a good example where the damage shows up when you don't expect it.